Okay, so people in the guild Discord and whatnot have been asking about rosters. I'm gonna just go ahead and make a quick video of me setting up. I set up rosters constantly. Um, I bought pages. Even if you don't buy the pages, though, it's you can redo your rosters as often as you want for free, and it can make a big difference. Um, so I'm just gonna go ahead and set up one for Steadwick. I'll have a Steadwick video explaining my strategy here, but basically this is the team I'm using. We got Lich, Griffin, Angel, Manicore, Black Knight, Vampire, Naga, and Bone Dragon. Now, these are all, for rosters in general, the tighter your groups are, like the fewer factions you use and the fewer unit types you use. So we're using 4 chargers, 3 attackers, and 1 caster. And for factions, we're using Undead, and then we got 2 castle, 1 tower, 1 dungeon. So we'll go back here to my roster page. All right, and I have this one cleared out already. So I have a bunch of them. I have 5, but I still am clearing them all the time. So the first thing I do when I'm setting up a new team, any new team for any reason, is clear the roster completely out. Now, if we're using a ton of unit types, but only like 2 factions, then I would do factions first. If we were using a ton of factions, but like all 1 unit type, which is kind of the way this is. We're not using a ton of factions, but we're going basically all chargers and offensive. And the other thing to consider is the number of units isn't necessarily as important, and it's also important to consider what rosters buff, which is attack and hit points, and that's it. So if you want your unit to do more damage or to have more life, then roster is important. But if say you're bringing, like for instance, I'm bringing a Griffin, and I'm only bringing it to buff flying units damage for the Bone Dragon for the most part, for utility, right? Or if you were bringing, say, an Angel just for a res, specifically for a res, then their hit points and their attack don't really matter. In this case, because we're using lots of charging, which a Griffin is, and because we're using the Angel, which a Griffin is, it doesn't really help us that it doesn't matter about this roster bonus. But if it did, because we're going to be, using chargers in Castle anyway, every unit obviously can go into two different types of a faction and a unit type. So, even though we have 3 offensive before chargers, the Bone Dragon is doing the vast majority of my damage, so he's way more important than anything. So we hit instant add here. Very first thing we do, all our best units are there. It's going to put the best. I have offensive all the way full, so it's going to put the best 6 offensive units that I have in here. Okay, now might not keep it that way, but what's the other one we're doing? A lot of is chargers. All right, and then we are using caster the Lich, but they're there also to buff the Bone Dragon, so not as important. So we're not going to worry about casters too much yet, but we'll still throw something in there. Okay, now we can look through these. What I can do here is be like, okay, I am using actually all of these factions. That's all right. We got Undead, Castle, and Dungeon. So we take a look here and see all the other charges we have here. Now, 1971 to 1914, that's like no difference at all. So we're going to swap that out. Now, my Harpy's available for Dungeon because we're not using Stronghold, so the Wolf Rider can't do shit but charging. And we'll just go up the line here like that. Manticore. And we'll leave that there. We'll pop the Griffin out. Let's see. Again, this is going to be like almost no change. We're not using conflicts. And we'll come back afterwards. So, we'll do the same thing for offensive. Now, we're using Undead, but that's my strongest attack unit. We're actually using like all of these units. Okay, but we're using the Naga for tower. So let's see what else we got. We get rid of the Stone Gargoyle. Castle. See, that's 1600 now, but we are going to be using Castle too, so I'll bear that in mind and come back to it. But anyway, it looks like I don't have any other really good offensive units to pop in here, so we're probably going to leave those the way they are. Now, the only other unit type I'm using is Caster, so defensive and ranged, and that's it, isn't it? Defensive and ranged, I don't have to worry about at all. So now we'll do, those are our two most important unit types, are charging and casting. Now I'm going to go to move towards faction. I'm not done with unit types. We haven't done casting yet. But I'm going to go to Necropolis because that's what we're using the most of as far as factions. Now, are any of these, see, we got 3 defensive units here and 2 casters. And we're not using any defensive, and the caster's not that important. So we'll go ahead and leave these, but we have an empty slot here. It's open, but it's not green. So I'm going to click on it, because that means everybody's being used somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll take my Black Knight out of charging. Okay, because the charging is going to buff 4 different units. But the Manticore is mostly there to reduce damage, and the Griffin's only there, or to reduce defense, and the Griffin's only there really to increase Flyers damage. Plus, I have a lot of chargers. So, now we have this all the way full, pretty nice buff here, 137% increase. You know, this is pretty significant stuff. That's why you want to maximize it if you're doing something challenging. Okay, so now we're going to go back to charging. We got an empty slot here. Now we are using dungeon. All right, so we got these 2 down here. We're not using Inferno or a Rampart, but they're kind of weak. The dungeon, the Manticore, I'm not too concerned about it, so I'm going to go ahead and decide to pop the Harpy in there. Because Castle, the Angel, is going to do a fair amount of damage. Okay. So after Necro, we have 2 castles, so we'll do Castle now. Instant add. Okay, now if you look here, you'll see we're not using the Pikeman. We check here. Strongest castle unit not being used anywhere is Pikeman down here at 1600. Kilrick's got a nice elemental. We're all very happy for him. Alright, so okay, so that's an attack unit there, right? So, what could I do here? Castle score is sitting there, 78% increase. So what if we go back and then we could go back and take a look? Because everything only goes into 2, can go into 2 pages. So is it worth swapping out this Stone Gargoyle? Because this Pikeman here, offensive unit, is not getting used in Castle. Or would it be worth putting the Griffin into Chargers? Let's take a look here. Where would we put Stone Gargoyle? In Tower, which we haven't done yet. That's the Naga. So we'll go ahead and pop them in here and just see what we got, what we're working with. Tower's pretty full. Although I have some good casters there, but Tower's pretty full, so we're not going to worry about that right now. Losing my train of thought here. We're not going to worry about, we're not going to worry about taking out the Stone Gargoyle to go to Tower and improve it. So what we'll do instead, maybe, is we'll see how much we can improve charging with the Griffin. Not much. We got our lowest star at 1900. The Griffin's at like 2000 even. So we'll go ahead and leave those as are for now. At this point, we start going through and just considering what we can totally disregard. Rampart, range, stronghold, defensive, not using any of that shit. Caster, we got to do that. Inferno, we're not using that. Tower, we're using that. Conflicts, nope, I'm not using the Psychic Elemental anymore. Dungeon is the only faction that we're using that we haven't done. Okay, so Dungeon's a little weak. The Manicore's not super important. Let's go take a look at Caster. Caster's pretty strong. Like I said, the Lich is primarily there to buff the Bone Dragon, but it's pretty powerful. It's just not getting any of the buffs in this particular strat. So, but none of these caster units are from any faction that we're using. So we're not going to want to take these and put them anywhere else. But we might be able to free something else up somewhere else. For instance, Tower has a bunch of killer casters, right? So say we pop Genie out of Tower, over here, bam, now my Lich is going to be strong, have more life and more attack. But my Naga's going to have less. But, from before we checked, and we have this guy here sitting in attack. Well, we pop him in here. Remember, we have units that aren't being used that we can go ahead and utilize. So now that we've taken him out of there, go back to all offensive, because that's where we took him out completely, and we'll put that in there. So what are we looking at? 119% attack and health. Now the Naga is going to be one of my bigger damage dealers, but a lot of that's for Magic Awakening. But you know what? My Bone Dragon is my main dude here. So actually, I'm gonna change my mind against that. So we'll just back it up. Take that out of Tower. Sorry, Naga, you're losing some hit points and attack. We'll just throw that in there because we still want to keep the casters strong. The Tower. Oh wait, no, casters is just the Lich. Yeah, we'll back it all the way up. Okay. So, all that is left, we'll go through again. Not using any of these four. Not using Inferno. Not using Conflux. Can we improve Dungeon at all? Well, we wouldn't want to swap out the Minotaur. Obviously, we want to swap out the weakest one. So, Chargers, we could take the Griffin out of the Charger. Chargers do significant damage, Manicore does not. Okay, so now we're basically done with this. Now, if you want, you can go through and hit all the empty ones and just auto-assign so you get rid of the red dots. What I do is I do have just like a general roster. You know, it's just kind of evenly balanced that I use for campaigns or, guild adventure or easy stuff like that. So I will every once in a while just pop into that roster, and I can just scroll through and see if there's any red dots. If I need to upgrade, if I got enough roster sheets to upgrade one. So now, it took a little bit of time. Obviously, took a lot longer because I'm describing it as I do it and whatnot. But now we have no wasted space in the roster for this specific group. I'll take a look here at. So we'll go look at the Bone Dragon here. It's getting 135% from the Necro and 110 from the offensive. Now, I mean, that's fucking huge, and that's one of the ways that we're gonna go now and do a fucking billion plus run on Steadwick under 400 million power. But yeah, so I have one separate for Crypt, I have one separate for TOA levels. Anything I'm trying, if I'm trying to beat Slab in Arena and I'm having trouble with Arena Defense, I'm trying out different comps and stuff. Once I find one that I'm kind of like, if I'm on the edge or with Conflux for any of that stuff, just redo the roster. It's free, and might as well squeeze everything you can get out of it instead of giving them all your fucking money, right? Which I still do anyway. But anyway, hope that helped you guys out, and I will go ahead and post this and get to work on that Steadwick.